Alright, beyond the throne family, you've been waiting for this one, haven't you? HBO just dropped the official trailer for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight. And I'm not gonna lie, I got chills. Like actual goosebumps watching Dunk swing that sword. But here's the thing most people don't realise about this show. This isn't just another Game of Thrones spin-off. This is actually the most important story in Westeros history that you've never heard of. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why Dunk and Egg's adventures are about to become your new obsession. So what exactly are we getting into here? Well, I'm going to break down everything you need to know about the Hedge Knight. And trust me, there's way more to unpack than you might think. First, we're diving deep into who Dunk and Egg actually are, because these aren't just random characters George R.R. Martin threw together. Second, I'll show you exactly where this fits in the Westeros timeline, and spoiler alert, it's gonna blow your mind how it connects to House of the Dragon. And third, we're talking about why this story is so beloved by book readers that HBO knew they had to adapt it. But here's what makes this even better. I've got some exclusive insights from the books that will help you catch details in the show that casual viewers will completely miss. Plus, I'll reveal the one character connection that links directly to Jon Snow's storyline that most people have no idea about. Okay, so you're probably thinking Dunk and Egg? Those sound like tavern nicknames, not the names of legendary heroes. And you'd be absolutely right to think that. Picture this, it's about 90 years before the events of Game of Thrones. There's this massive guy, we're talking nearly 7 feet tall, wandering the roads of Westeros with nothing but a horse, some rusty armour, and a dream of becoming a knight. His real name is Sir Duncan the Tall, but everyone calls him Dunk because, well, he's not exactly the sharpest sword in the armoury, if you know what I mean. Now here's where it gets interesting. Dunk's not actually a knight, not technically. His master, Sir Arlen of Pennytree, died before he could officially knight him, so what does Dunk do? He basically decides to fake it till he makes it. He takes Sir Arlen's armour, buries the old man under a tree, and starts calling himself a hedge knight. And then he meets this kid, scrawny little thing, maybe 10 years old, with a shaved head and attitude for days. The kid says his name is Egg and he wants to be Dunk's squire. Dunk's thinking, great, some random street kid wants to follow me around. But here's what Dunk doesn't know. And this is where George R.R. Martin is absolutely brilliant with his storytelling. Egg isn't just some random kid, he's Prince Aegon Targaryen, 4th son of King Maekar I, and he's destined to become one of the greatest kings in Westeros history, Aegon V, also known as Aegon the Unlikely. Yeah, that's right. Dunk's been travelling around with royalty this whole time and has no clue. The dynamic between these two is pure gold. You've got this gentle giant who's trying to do the right thing but keeps stumbling into trouble, paired with this secretly royal kid who's way smarter than he lets on. It's like a medieval buddy cop story, but with dragons in the background. Now, if you're trying to figure out when exactly this takes place, you're gonna love this because the timeline is actually perfect for understanding the bigger picture. The Hedge Knight takes place in 208 AC, that's about 90 years before Robert's Rebellion and roughly 190 years before the events of Game of Thrones. But here's what makes the timing so crucial. This is during what historians call the Targaryen Golden Age. Dragons are extinct. They died out about 150 years earlier, but the Targaryens are still the undisputed rulers of Westeros. King Daeron II is on the Iron Throne and the realm is relatively peaceful. No massive wars, no White Walker threats, just the usual political scheming and regional conflicts. But, and this is a big but, this is also the calm before some serious storms. The Blackfire rebellions are brewing in the background. These were massive civil wars between different branches of the Targaryen family, and they're gonna tear the realm apart for generations. And here's something most people don't realise about the timeline. Remember Aegon II and Rhaenyra's civil war from House of the Dragon? That happened about 130 years before Dunk and Egg's story, so by the time we meet our heroes, the Dance of Dragons is ancient history, but its consequences are still shaping the world. The Targaryens lost their dragons because of that civil war, which means the world Dunk and Egg live in is fundamentally different from what we saw in House of the Dragon. The Targaryens still rule, but they're not the godlike dragon lords anymore. They're just people. Really important people with silver hair and a tendency toward madness, but still just people. This makes their story way more relatable than you might expect. When Egg reveals his true identity, it's not like, oh, I'm a dragon rider who can burn cities. It's more like, oh, I'm a prince, but I still need to learn how to be a good person. The events in the Hedge Night directly set up some of the most important moments in Westeros history. The friendships Egg makes, the lessons he learns from Dunk, all of that shapes him into the king he becomes. And Aegon V's reign, that directly impacts everything that happens in Game of Thrones. So what's actually going to happen in this first season? Well, if they're following the books, and everything suggests they are, we're getting the Ashford Tourney, and let me tell you, this is not your typical medieval tournament. Picture the most chaotic, politically charged sporting event you can imagine. Then add medieval weapons and Targaryen family drama. That's the Ashford Tourney. Dunk shows up, thinking he's going to compete in some jousting. Maybe win a few coins. Prove he's a real knight. Simple, right? Wrong. So incredibly wrong. First, he gets into an argument with Prince Aegon Targaryen. And this guy is bad news. We're talking Joffrey-level sadistic, but with actual combat skills and royal protection. Aerion's been tormenting a puppet show performer, and Dunk, being the good-hearted guy he is, steps in to help. Now, you don't just hit a prince and walk away, especially not a Targaryen prince. Aegon demands a trial by combat, not just any trial by combat, but a trial of 7. That means Dunk needs to find 6 other knights willing to fight alongside him against 7 royal champions. And here's where it gets really interesting. Egg finally reveals who he really is, because he knows his master is about to die for defending a puppet show performer. The political implications are insane. If Dunk loses, he dies. If he wins, he's basically beaten up the royal family. But what makes this story brilliant is that it's not really about the fighting. It's about honor, friendship, and what it means to be a true knight. Dunk learns that being a knight isn't about having the fanciest armor or the best bloodline. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves, even when it costs you everything. And Egg? He learns that being royal doesn't make you better than anyone else. The best people he knows are common folk like Dunk, who choose to do the right thing when no one's watching. The consequences of this tournament echo through Westeros history. The friendships formed, the enemies made, the lessons learned, they all shape the future of the 7 kingdoms in ways you won't see coming. Now here's where things get really wild. The connections between Dunk and Egg's story and the events of Game of Thrones are way deeper than you might think. Remember Maester Aemon at Castle Black, the old blind Maester who mentored Jon Snow? Yeah, that's Egg's older brother. Aemon Targaryen gave up his claim to the throne so Egg could become king. Every time Aemon talks about his family in Game of Thrones, he's talking about characters we're about to meet in The Hedge Night. But that's just the beginning. You know how Jon Snow is always struggling with questions of honor and duty? Guess where those Targaryen family values come from? Aegon V, our Egg, is Daenerys and Jon Snow's great-great-grandfather. The lessons he learns from Dunk about protecting the common people, that directly influences Targaryen family philosophy for generations. When Daenerys talks about breaking chains and protecting the innocent, she's channeling values that trace back to Egg's adventures with a Hedge Knight. And here's something that'll blow your mind. Remember the tragedy at Summerhall, that mysterious fire that killed multiple Targaryens and basically ended their attempts to bring back dragons? Egg dies in that fire along with his son Prince Duncan, and who was named after our Dunk. But the craziest connection of all involves a certain tall knight who shows up in Game of Thrones, and Sir Duncan the Tall's bloodline doesn't end with him. There are theories, really strong theories backed by textual evidence, that Hodor is descended from Dunk. Think about it, Hodor's real name is Walder. He's abnormally tall and strong, and he has that same gentle, protective nature that defines Dunk. So when Hodor sacrifices himself to save Bran, he's not just being heroic. He's following a family tradition of protecting others that goes back to his ancestor, Sir Duncan the Tall. The hold the door moment becomes even more powerful when you realise it's the culmination of a bloodline dedicated to service and protection. And there are hints that other characters might be descended from Dunk too. Brienne of Tarth has that same unwavering sense of honour and unusual height, the small paw at Castle Black. Even some of the Cleganes might have Dunk's blood. So why should you care about a Hedge Knight and his royal squire when you could be watching dragons burn cities or political schemes in King's Landing? Because this is the story that proves George R.R. Martin's world isn't just about power and betrayal. It's about the people who choose to be good in a world that punishes goodness. Dunk and Egg's adventures are the heart of Westeros. While everyone else is playing the Game of Thrones, these two are just trying to do the right thing. They're not trying to conquer kingdoms or claim birthrights. They're helping people, learning about friendship and discovering what honour really means. And here's what makes their story so powerful. It's hopeful. In a world where we're used to seeing our favourite characters die horrible deaths, Dunk and Egg's story is about growth, friendship, and the idea that good people can make a difference. This is the story that shows us what Westeros could be if people chose cooperation over conquest, honour over ambition, and friendship over power. It's not naive. There's still danger, still conflict, still real stakes. But it's fundamentally optimistic in a way that Game of Thrones rarely was. When you watch Dunk struggle with self-doubt, wondering if he's really worthy of being called a knight, you're seeing the internal battle that every good person faces. When you see Egg learning that his royal blood doesn't make him special, you're watching someone discover that true nobility comes from your actions, not your ancestry. Now, HBO's got a pretty good track record with Westeros adaptations, but there are some specific things they absolutely need to nail for the Hedge Knight to work. First, they need to get the tone right. This isn't Game of Thrones. It's not about shocking deaths and political betrayals. It's about character development and moral growth. The violence needs to feel consequential, not gratuitous. Second, the casting is crucial. Dunk needs to be physically imposing but emotionally vulnerable. He's not a typical hero. He's awkward, self-doubting, but fundamentally decent. And Egg needs to be smart enough that we believe he could become a great king, but young enough that his growth feels genuine. But here's the biggest challenge. They need to make us care about characters who aren't trying to rule the world. In a universe where we're used to dragons and ice zombies and resurrection magic, they need to make a story about friendship and honour feel just as compelling. If they get it right, the Hedge Knight could be the best thing to come out of the Game of Thrones universe since the original series. It has all the political intrigue and rich world building we love, but with characters we can actually root for without worrying they're going to get their heads chopped off in the next episode. So there you have it. Everything you need to know about a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight. We've got a gentle giant learning what it means to be a true knight, a secret prince discovering that nobility comes from actions, not bloodlines, and a story that connects to every major event in Westeros history. But here's the real reason this story matters, and why I think it's going to be absolutely incredible. It reminds us why we fell in love with George R.R. Martin's world in the first place. Not because of the shocking deaths or the political scheming, but because of the characters who choose to be good in a world that makes goodness difficult. When the Hedge Knight premieres, you're not just watching another Game of Thrones spin-off. You're watching the origin story of honour in Westeros. You're seeing where the values that drive characters like Jon Snow and Brienne of Tarth actually come from. And honestly, after everything we've been through with this universe, I think we're ready for a story about heroes who actually get to be heroic. Now, I'm curious, which connection blew your mind the most? The Hodor-Dunk bloodline theory? The fact that Maester Aemon is Egg's brother? Or maybe something else entirely? Drop a comment below and let me know what you're most excited to see in The Hedge Knight. And if you think there are other characters who might be descended from Dunk, I'd love to hear your theories. Now, everything I've just told you about Dunk and Egg's place in Westeros history is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore in this incredible world, from the Blackfire rebellions that shaped the political landscape to the other Dunk and Egg adventures that HBO might adapt next. So make sure you're subscribed to Beyond the Throne, because we're just getting started. I'll be breaking down every episode of The Hedge Knight as soon as they drop, diving deep into the lore, the connections, and all the details that make this world so incredible. Trust me, once you see how it all connects, you're gonna be counting down the days until The Hedge Knight premieres.